Okay, well, hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to Oceans of Stories. We're so happy to have you with us today. My name is Jasper and I am the coordinator at the Vancouver Asian Heritage Month Society. And I'm here to welcome you to our program and moderate today's conversation. So before we begin, I'd like to honor and recognize the original custodians of the land from where I'm speaking to you today. explorASIAN Festival is hosted and largely attended on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded and shared territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations in the city that is colonially known as Vancouver. We as individuals and as an organization have a responsibility to honor the ancestors of this land and the continual stewardship enacted by the host nations, the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh. We invite you to reflect on where you are located today. If you are located on sovereign unceded territory, we invite you to critically interrogate the colonial histories that have brought us here today and the ongoing present-day implications of those histories. So for a bit of housekeeping, please note that we are recording this event for archival purposes. We also have closed captioning enabled to make this event as accessible as possible for folks who have difficulty hearing. We invite you to engage with us through the chat and with the question and answer portal. So if you have comments or questions you would like to share with us, please feel free during the presentation or the conversation, I should say, and I will do my best to make sure the questions and comments arrive to the right places. And if at any point you need assistance with the technology, please feel free to send me a direct message through the chat down below and I'll do my best to assist you. Okay, so today is National Canadian Film Day in Canada, and we are pleased to present a virtual screening of Ali Kazimi's 2004 film, Continuous Journey. It is a docudrama that explores the exclusionary politics that kept the Indian passengers of the Komagata Maru sequestered at sea in the Port of Vancouver for over 2 months in 1914. But to preface the film, we're here today to hear from a number of folks who will share their own refugee stories gathered through personal experiences, their art, their work, and their family histories. So I'd like to take a moment in a minute to meet all of our panelists, but first I would like to invite Leticia Sanchez to say a few words. Leticia is the president of VAHMS, and Leticia, please tell us a bit about yourself and about VAHMS.
Thank you, Jasper. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Jasper. Thank you for the kind introduction. My name is Leticia Sanchez. As Jasper said, I'm the president of the Vancouver Asian Heritage Month Society, and I am joining you today from the unceded territories of the Musqueam nations here in Burnaby, British Columbia. It's May is Asian Heritage Month in Canada, and this year marks the 25th anniversary for the Vancouver Asian Heritage Month Society and for the explorASIAN Festival. Since 1996, VAHMS has been committed to recognizing and showcasing the vast cultural heritage and participation of the many Pan-Asian and Asian Canadian communities and cultures that converge in this land that we call Canada. 25 years after its inception, the explorASIAN Festival has become the second largest festival celebrating Asian Heritage Month in Canada and fostering and promoting the arts and cultural diversity. Thanks to our 2021 virtual component, now we're able to reach out to all provinces across Canada and also internationally. So for the past 25 years, explorASIAN has been a festival where cultural heritage is valued and where all Asian voices and stories of migration and struggles when finding a place to settle down and call it home are appreciated and heard. And there is no better way today to value and understand these voices than with Ocean of Stories and the Komagata Maru on Canada Film Day. I want to recognize our panelists today for being the unifying voice between these refugee stories and the community. The more we learn about the others, the more we find similarities and connections, and the more we value our diverse society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leticia. Thanks for being with us today. So now I thought we would take a moment to meet everyone here who's on the call with us today. So we'll start with Sangeeta Wiley. Sangeeta, welcome to the program. Could you take a minute or two to introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Jasper and Leticia, for having me, and to Vancouver Asian Heritage Month Society. I am here because I've been developing a play. So I'm an actor and a playwright, and I've been developing a play inspired by a true story of a family. One of the panelists here today is a member of that family. And it's a story of the Vietnamese refugees in the 1970s. So that's what brings me here.
Great. Thank you, Sangeeta. Great to have you with us. We should, I guess, the next place to go would be to Hannah Temple. Hi, Hannah. Welcome to the program. Could you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, my name is Hannah Temple, and I'm a former refugee that was part of the Boat People, Canada's monumental refugee initiative response that welcomed over 60,000 Vietnamese refugees during 1978 to 81 in its government matching refugee program. I'm currently finishing up my major research project as part of my graduate studies at Royal Roads University, a narrative autoethnography. I believe that part of storytelling is preserving historical experiences so that those stories will not be forgotten. And I'm just really happy to be here in Canada through the generosity of the private sponsorships. And I have shared my story to hundreds of people, and really happy to be part of this conversation today.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Up next, Mohammed Al-Saleh. Could you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Jasper, and thank you, Sangeeta and Hannah, for introducing yourselves. I am very excited and actually honored to be part of a discussion that brings such unique voices like yourself and the rest of the panelists today. Me, myself, I happen to be a former refugee from Syria. I was very lucky to be among the very first group of Syrian refugees that came to Canada back in 2014. Back then, we had the government of Stephen Harper welcome Syrian refugees to Canada for the first time ever, and they kicked off the process with sponsoring 200, only 200, government-assisted refugees. I was lucky enough to be among the 28 first people that came here to BC, and ever since I've been restarting starting over a new life here in Canada to just rise from the ashes of the civil war of Syria. Currently, I am a computer science student. I just finished my first year, and I'm very excited about the rest of this journey. And what brings me here today is to share and reflect on the past 10 years of my life. In this short period of time, in 10 years, I went from a medical doctor in training back in Syria, then to a terrorist by the definition of the Syrian government, to a refugee, to a new Canadian. A lot of things to talk about, and I'm so happy to be here and so excited about this discussion. Thank you so much, Jasper.
Thank you, Mohammed. Yeah, wow, you said it. There's so much to talk about today. Thank you for being here. Up next, Patricia Warwick. Welcome to the panel. Could you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Thank you, Jasper. I'm Patricia Warwick. I'm the CEO of Immigrant Services Society of British Columbia. And ISS of BC was the first organization in British Columbia to provide services to refugees and immigrants. So I've had the great privilege of meeting any number of people from around the world again and again who have come here under terrible circumstances and making a new life, making the country richer, making Canada a more exciting and vibrant country.
Great, thank you, Patricia. And last but not least, we have Saleem Spindari. Welcome, Saleem. Hello.
Thank you very much, Jasper. My name is Saleem Spindari. I'm the Senior Manager of Refugees and Migrant Worker Programs at Mosaic. Mosaic is an agency that was established in 1976 by a group of refugees. And currently we work with a vision of together we advance an inclusive and thriving Canada. I came to Canada in December of '97 as a refugee, and I have been honored to be advocating on refugee issues over the years. I have, as part of my advocacy, I was the co-chair of multi-agency partnership, and a partnership that brings together organizations and individuals supporting refugee claimants. And I have also been on the executive of the Canadian Council for Refugees, an umbrella advocacy group that advocate for refugee rights in Canada. I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you, Saleem. Thank you everyone for making the time to be here. Thank you for, I just listening to everyone talk about themselves briefly, I'm struck by all of the histories that have brought us to this very moment where we're all here on a call together. It's really something to think about. So as I said, we're here to share stories. We're here to find the common threads. We're here to explore histories. So I thought we could start with you, Sangeeta, since I think you're a big reason why we're all here on this call today, talking about our stories. So I wonder if you could tell us about your play, talk about the work you're doing, what drew you to the story, and how it converges with our presentation of Continuous Journey.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this story came to me from my neighbor, Hannah's sister, and I'll just give you a little bit of the background. We were having a barbecue, and I didn't know May all that well at that time. And so she had made Vietnamese salad rolls and homemade peanut sauce. And I said, oh, I didn't know you're Vietnamese. So we started to talk, and I asked her to tell me about Vietnam. And she said she couldn't remember anything. And she started telling me about how she was 4 when they came over, and started to tell the story, basically her mother's story of the journey that they took. And it went from, they were lucky to escape, to there was pirate attacks, and there was typhoons on the ocean, and 2 months of being on the ocean, and shipwreck and starvation. This is a mother with 6 young children under the age of 8, and they'd lost their father along the way. So this was a story that, as I was listening, I thought, wow, I haven't heard the details of this, and I don't know how many of us have. And I thought it would be an interesting thing for us, as neighbors in the grander sense, that we need to understand each other's stories. So that's where it started. And then I met their mother, and we talked, and she agreed to allow me to give me the custodianship of their story. So that's where it started about 4 years ago. And the story became one of intergenerational healing, because until that point, when her mother had told me the story, even May didn't know all the details. And so there was a lot that came out in watching May and her mother together, and discovering, and their relationship deepening. And I knew it was important. I knew it was important. I also had personal connections to my own family stories through this, which became apparent later on. So it's amazing how, when we step out of our own boxes and into someone else's lives, how we grow as well. So that's where it started. The title of the play is called We the Same. I think we have a trailer, Jasper, if you wanted to show it, maybe.
I do have a trailer right here. Would you like me to pull it up for us?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
People on bicycle, car, animal everywhere. Many whole too. A lot of cars stuck in the mud or in the ditch.
What happened to your husband?
Bao was put on the other boat.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He has my shoes. One bus fall over. It go on fire. Become a burning coffin. Seemed like everyone tried to leave Vietnam one way or another.
I remember.
By illuminating the actual lived experiences of refugees through the development and ultimate production of We the Same, we at Ruby Slippers Theater are hoping to humanize the refugee experience in the hopes that that will help eliminate some of the cruel prejudices and biases that exist in Canadian society against refugees and against immigrants in general.
The gentleman beside me turned to me and he said, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I said, "No." And he said, "I was on the boat with you and your mother and brother when you left Vietnam. You were crying so much because we ran out of food, and the people on the boat wanted to throw you overboard because they were afraid that you were going to alert and draw attention to us and alert more pirates. And me and your mother had to fight them off."
In the spring of 2017, I was at a barbecue, and my friend told me about leaving Vietnam in the 70s as a boat person. It was a compelling story of her mother and her 6 young children. But for me, it was a story I hadn't heard before in that kind of detail. In my case, this story brought me closer to my own story and to my own culture, and it opened up a new culture for me, which I fell in love with.
A few minutes after we stopped, a bomb go off. First, big sound, then quiet. Metal, clothing, body part everywhere. Land in the river too. The bridge we supposed to take is gone.
The best way to know people is to hear their stories rather than watch news segments about them. When we live in a world where it's very difficult to tell what is truthful and what's not, that's when lived human experiences matter.
We hope.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's just a little taste of a bit of the reading that we did in the fall of 2020. Yeah, and so I think these stories, I mean, what's interesting about this story and the story that of the Komagata Maru is, you know, the starting points for these stories. There's often, these are the after effects of war, of colonialism, of, you know, bureaucracies within governments. You look at people having to leave because something is not right. And that's the origins of, and where we start to see the commonalities of why people have to leave their home, right? Yeah, so I just think that these stories are really important for us to start to understand each other and more to make the connection between each other. And art just basically is a doorway for that. It'll give you a little bit of the story, but it's up to you to actually talk to the person next to you, talk to the person in the grocery line behind you, and understand that everyone has a story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I was struck watching the film today by the causality that you could easily see between colonialism and the disastrous voyage of the Komagata Maru. To bring it back to your play, Sangeeta, Hannah, this work is about your family. So I wonder if you could speak a bit about why it's important to hear your family's story told. And perhaps you could talk a bit about your research project in narrative autoethnography.
Sure. Well, Sangeeta, you've done such a beautiful job on my family's story. Your research and heart within this play is seen in your craft and the way in which you honor the art of storytelling. And although I began my journey, began to explore my family's history when I was 19 years old, at this point, Sangeeta knows more about my family story of the escape than I do through her extensive research. And my mom is not going to be around forever, and I want her voice to be heard and our stories not to be forgotten for my children and for my children's children and so on. And so We the Same is one way that the story is being told. Seeing the play in its developmental stage has been really special and emotional for my family and myself. And I think We the Same really humanizes the experience of refugees. And it's through humor, hope, and tragedy. And I really hope that the audience will relate to those themes, regardless of if they're a refugee or not. So I think it was only natural in my graduate studies to choose to do a narrative autoethnography. My chosen project takes a qualitative approach where I am the researcher and participant. Basically, it's a story of my lived experiences and reflections on resettling in Canada within the context of my family's miraculous escape from Vietnam, and then as refugees, and then sponsored Canada. My story is titled They, which is the Vietnamese preposition that means to return, be back in, or noun for home. The concept of they, home, was never far from my mind as I share how the ritual of eating at my dinner table with my parents and 5 siblings was the very anchor that informed my cultural identity and belonging. The daily table of gathering cemented home for me in the midst of living and adjusting to a strange new country. This is a very personal and meaningful project to me as I preserve my family story and celebrate the courage of my parents, their courage to dare dream of freedom and a better future for their 6 children. That single decision changed my life forever. I tell their story through making pho, which is Vietnamese beef noodle soup, with my mom, and then I sit around the dinner table with my own family and share the story. The story shows how pho weaves into the very fabric of Vietnam's history and then into my family's table as we celebrate this event, the event of eating pho. The purpose of an autoethnography, as my supervisor puts it, is relatability. And when we relate, we empathize. So that is my hope for my autoethnography.
Thank you, Hannah. Yeah, Sangeeta, you said something that I was thinking of as you were speaking, Hannah, that learning about someone else's story taught you about yourself. And stories, that's what stories do. They teach us about ourselves, and they show us that we have so much more in common than we have in differences, as human beings. Mohammed, I wonder if we could go to you next. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to watch the film yet, or if, but I wonder, if you could speak to how, Hannah's story, or what you know of the Komagata Maru, how these stories relate to your own story, and maybe if you could speak a bit about your experiences in advocacy.
I'm listening to Sangeeta and Hannah share, share about how they met each other. And this just makes me think of how many stories are out there around us, and we just don't know about it. And this reminds me of when I met Sangeeta at a mutual friend's house. And at that time, we didn't know what each one of us holds inside of them, and what kind of knowledge we can exchange, and what kind of things we can create together. And I think about this moment and how this virtual panel happened. It was thanks to the simple notion of being curious to know what is the story of the other person, where are they from, and who they are on a personal level. And that, to me, my friend, is the importance of stories and the importance of sharing stories. Because right now, we live in a world where there is such a thing, such as alternative facts, and there is so many different versions of the truth. And when we think about the fact that the mainstream media is not a non-for-profit organization, and it is funded by groups that has agendas, and sometimes the truth gets lost in between all of these dynamics. So how do we unpack this complex reality? Well, I don't have all the answers, but one thing I can think about is sharing stories. One thing I can do is come to such a meeting and share with you all my story. It's the same thing that Hannah did with Sangeeta, and that have created an amazing play that is in, like, hopefully one day will be full, but I was exposed to it in the making, and believe me, there is nothing as powerful and as transformative as seeing the story being relived in front of you. So when we were listening to the play being read by some people who actually are from the community or might have been very close to the story, that they are from the family itself, you feel that they're not just telling you a story, you are actually witnessing the reliving of it, and it's people in the blood and in the flesh, kind of taking you back in time to when it happened and to how it happened, and that's how the labels that are created, and we hear the word refugee, and we realize, well, this labels, about 90 million people. So how do we even know the individual behind deep down this label? And the answer goes back again to stories. So for me personally, sharing my story is what helped me make sense of my life when I first came to Canada. And if I was to highlight anything here in our session today, is that would be the fact that refugees, people who flee their homelands, don't plan that. If we talk about plans, my personal plan, when I was in Syria, I was a medical doctor in training. I was very close to graduation. And if I did my plan, I would be a practicing doctor back there in Syria. But being a refugee is in fact losing choices, being in a position in life where you're not the decision maker of your life. Suddenly, things happen to you, and your job is to respond to them and to try to survive. So in my personal case, a civil war breaks out, and I have to leave my plans and leave outside of the country. And just to think about how crazy our world is, the fact that I came as a refugee to Canada with nothing and without my family and without my education to a country I don't even speak its language was considered lucky. Now I think to myself, did I choose this? Did I want it? To all the haters that even ask for justification, why are you here? Well, I didn't choose to come here. I don't want to come here. My plan is very different. I'm very happy to tell you all about my story. And this again brings me back to how important stories are. I don't want to spend so many time talk about the same point, but I feel that I just come back to it. And I'm very grateful to Sangeeta and Hannah for sharing this, creating the story, and also for National Canada Film Day for putting together this platform that can share meaningful, transformative stories with everybody that is willing to hear. And before I give you the mic back, I just want to even like bring to our audiences and one like very important thing that here and every single panel that you see in front of you is a story of a person who I like by a simple count, I can see like 30% of us are refugees, 50% of the speakers or more are immigrants, and 100% of them are people who are promoting the stories of refugees and trying to do the right thing. So I want everybody to join this wave of sharing and receiving stories so we can all know each other on a human level. And that's how we beat the misconceptions that can be created by the mass media.
Thank you, Mohammed. You said so much there that the whole, as I was listening, there was so much that I wanted to, talk about, but I would like to give Patricia and Saleem a chance to jump in here. Would you like to comment on the importance of these stories and what everyone's been talking about from the perspective of the work that you do? Maybe we could start with you, Patricia.
The old mute trick again. A couple of things that I want to comment. I'm not a refugee, but I can tell you that my husband's parents were refugees. They were rescued from a camp after World War II and spent a couple of years in a refugee center, and then were fortunate to have family in Canada and were able to come here. But I tell you this only because so much of the stories they shared over the years continue to resonate with the work that I do, that the people that I see. And I think about at Welcome Center, we have residences for refugees who come to Canada, and they essentially come from camps to Canada, and then they stay with us until we can help them find a place in community. And there's names in the doors of the rooms, and there's words like courage and bravery and perseverance and resilience. And I think those are all the things that I heard from my in-laws, and that's what I always hear from the people that I've had the fortune of meeting over the last 24 years. And I think that it's such a lesson to all of us, regardless of where you were born or where you come from. Those stories, I think, really resonate because you can in fact internalize those lessons essentially. The other point I want to make is, Sangeeta, I think it's so interesting that this started, your journey into doing this play started around food, because I have had the great fortune of being able to travel the world again and again and again. And so much happens around food. And to me, food in and of itself is storytelling, because sure enough, you go into some place and you share food with someone and you say, oh, what is this? Where does it come from? What's the history of the food? And pretty soon you're on this, having this conversation with someone and finding out their life story. And it changes your perception of people, it changes your perception of community, and it just makes it that much richer. So that's kind of the comment I wanted to make.
I wanted to just comment on that quickly too, because I think Mohammed and I met around food as well. A couple of times. And he and his family, a lot of friends and all that, they'd put together a catering company, and I was one of the privileged and honored tasters of
nice
a beautiful spread. And so with that comes bonding and stories, like you say. Yeah.
Yes, it is an excellent point. Food is often our first introductions to other cultures. It is often our first opportunity to interface with other cultures. And it is often a place where we store stories. I know that, my dad taught me how to cook, and Leticia, you know, last year you started the Yum Use Food Project, where we invited folks to share their recipes and share their stories attached to their recipes, and we got so many. We just learned, we got so many wonderful submissions about people and just how much joy there was in the kitchen and the food they were making, and how excited people were to talk about their families and their stories.
Yes, yeah, I think that food and stories are the best way of tasting the food and having a taste of the lives of people. And yes, in my personal story, when people ask me about where I'm coming from and why I am here, as Mohammed said, sometimes you don't really decide to come here, but you are here and you have so many things to give up from who you are and what you do. So it's just amazing to hear these stories. But I let Saleem to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leticia. Stories fascinate me because that's where we learn about some of the past injustices, and at the same time, it gave us some life lessons. So for me, when Sangeeta was talking about hearing the story and then doing her part to humanize the story and bring it forward, that's essentially what needs to happen. We really need to emphasize the importance of humanizing the stories. That's how we learn about what happened and learn lessons from it. When I was reflecting on the story of the Vietnamese boat people, the important part that it happened, many people managed to save their lives and reach the shores. But at the same time, it mobilized the community to start a private sponsorship program, which is a program that started back then, and it has been very influential in saving many lives over the years. And Canada has taken pride for its uniqueness. The other thing that we really need to remember, that the story of the Komagata Maru, for example, that was one of the black stains on the record of Immigration Canada, of how systems could be put in place to bar people who are trying to reach the shore of a place. And when I was listening to, when I was watching the Komagata Maru, some of the things that caught my attention was that the government did its best to look fair and just, to use all of the systems to share that the population, that it's preventing others from coming in, and the whole notion of others is really important for us to know. One of the speakers in the documentary said that I don't want us to distance ourselves from what happened, because sometimes inattentionally we do the same. You know, we unintentionally, I mean, we do the same, because I remember when the Syrian refugees started leaving Syria and fleeing, and there was Canada was not doing enough at the time to welcome them. And I remember being invited to many places, and people were really skeptical. How can we let a group of people without going through the process to come here and all that? And when Patricia was talking about her extended family members being experiencing refugees, that was the line that I used to tell my story, but at the same time to ask the audience if they had anyone within their families who were from refugee background, and basically to use that story to mobilize. And I'm really happy that the community mobilized. Are we still there? No, we still have the Safe Third Country Agreement with the United States that bars people from coming here, and if they first arrive in the States. So Canada needs to do more to support refugees and to welcome them. And we hope that we learn our lessons from the stories of the past.
Thank you, Saleem. You made me think of something Mohammed was saying as you were speaking. Mohammed, you brought up the media and news, and it made me think about just the privilege of being heard. You know, a lot of to speak and be heard is a great privilege, and that a lot of people don't enjoy. You know, and we live in an age where we're flooded with information and news, and for a lot of folks who are not directly connected to these stories, or who have not had the chance to hear these stories firsthand or experience them through art or through, you know, investigating histories, they can get the wrong story or a very inaccurate story of someone's life. And so I wanted to ask you, Hannah, as someone who has had their family's story told by another person, I wonder if you could speak about that experience and like what, you know, what it took to develop the trust to allow that story to be told in a way that felt true and correct for you and your family.
That's a great question. And I think, obviously, you know, Sangeeta's relationship was more with my mother and my sister, and then I met her later on. But when I heard about it, I thought, wow, to use arts as a medium to tell the story so that more people can hear about it, that's amazing. A lot of times people may bring up the point, well, shouldn't a Vietnamese person be telling the story? Shouldn't you be telling it? I have told my stories. But I think the beauty of Sangeeta's telling it is that, like she said, she's the custodian of it. She honored it. She researched so intensively. She went back and retraced my family's escape. She put so much hard work and research and integrity with handling of the story. Once I saw it the first time being in development on Granville Island, I was blown away. I was blown away at how she interweaved folklore, superstition, all the different things that are part of Vietnam's history into the play. And I think she did it with like she gave it justice. And so I really appreciate how she approached it and how sensitive she was to the project and handled it with such care.
I think, custody is a very important word there. And it sounds like, Sangeeta, you just, like, it really comes down to curiosity, right? Like you cared about the story, you were curious about the story, and that was a precursor for treating it with care and compassion. And I think it's a precursor for empathy and compassion in general. We have to be curious about each other. We have to give each other the attention. Otherwise, we will never, you know, develop that mutual compassion and empathy for each other.
It's an awesome responsibility, is what it is. And I mean, along the way, I was always checking in with Hannah's sister May, because Hannah lives in Calgary, so the connection was to May here and her mother, and so I was checking in and you know, showing them the script at different stages and making sure they approved. Yeah, it's an awesome responsibility to weave together somebody else's story. And something in me knew it had to be told, and I didn't know why in the beginning. And then it eventually did lead me back to my own story. You know, it was somebody in my family who had become an asylum seeker, but I didn't know, as you talked about earlier, not knowing sometimes the other side of the story, not knowing all sides of a story sometimes. And I think sometimes when you're outside of a story, you're able to collect different sides of a story too. That's one of the things you can do. You can kind of see different angles. Yeah, that's what I can say about that. But it's just interesting how something just, you know, as an artist, something grabs you and you don't even know the reason, but you know that you have to, you know that it has to be told, you know it has to be done, you know. And I've just
if I may,
yep.
If I may interject here, I'm just thinking about something Spider-Man said, and it was with great power comes great responsibility, and that's what you have, Sangeeta, a great responsibility to be truthful to your cause and dedicated to the people who entrusted you with their story, and this makes me think about the importance of art as a tool, as a method, as a way of telling those stories in the right way, not and not in a way that uses the story to further their own agenda. And that's the type of responsibility that I'm talking about. The responsibility to be to create the content that we need for the betterment of our planet, not to the betterment of certain groups' agendas. And you know, now that we're talking about stories, I think there is a really interesting story that is going on here in Vancouver that I think our audience might be interested to hear. And I want actually Saleem to share about us, because I know that Mosaic right now is putting together a huge initiative to sponsor a group of stranded refugees. So just for some context, there is an island near Australia, and Australia is so anti-refugees that they don't want to like welcome them to their country, and they have been there for years. And the story that I want to talk about right now is how Mosaic is trying to help this stranded group to come here to BC and to Vancouver. And these are the type of stories that I think would make our planet better, but only if they happen. And I think we should spread the word and keep on sharing these stories. And yeah, I'm not sure if you have some information about that initiative, Saleem, but I was really happy to hear about this last time I met with you. And yeah, like just the island and what's happening in it.
Thank you, Mohammed. Jasper, if I have a couple minutes, I can just briefly talk about it. It's called Operation Not Forgotten, and it's a joint partnership that Mosaic is leading with the Refugee Council of Australia and Adds Up Canada, which is a group of Australian diaspora in Canada who are assisting in fundraising and supporting activities. What we are trying to do here is to rescue, I would use the word rescue actually, to privately sponsor the refugees who have been in detention for more than 8 years. And some of them actually have committed suicide. They were turned away from Australia and put on offshore processing centers, they call them, but prison-like circumstances. And it's really terrible. So in December of 2019, we were approached by advocates in Australia saying that there is really no hope for them in Australia, and if we could do something. And we at Mosaic, we decided to use all of our sponsorship allocation and ask for more from the Canadian government. So far, we've submitted application for 140 refugees from that place, plus 72 of their family members. So in total, we've submitted sponsorship application for more than 200. COVID-19 has slowed down the processing, but we are hoping and waiting to receive the refugees as soon as Immigration Canada starts approving more people to come during the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Saleem. If I could ask you a follow-up, Saleem.
Sure.
Earlier, you mentioned, I mean, you said that the Canadian government could be doing more, and I would love to ask you about that, but I don't imagine we have time for you to unpack all of that for us. But I wonder if you could talk a bit about what people can do to lobby their local representatives, or what kind of action they can take, what kind of organizations they can support to support refugees and organizations like yours and Patricia's.
Thank you. So really to write to their MPs, we elect them, we expect them to work for us, we expect them to put policies in place that reflect our values as Canadians. What we have seen over the years, that the private sponsorship program sponsor more refugees than government assisted refugees, basically. The numbers are really low when it comes to it. We do have the capacity. Our immigration system is put in is worked in such a way that allows economic migrants to come, but at the same time refugees. But the numbers are really small. So what we hope that people would do to reach out to volunteer with organizations such as Mosaic ISS of BC, Options, Diversity, Success, and others that are doing really amazing works in the sector. But at the same time, to help us with fundraising efforts, because when we talk about private sponsorship, we really rely on donations to be able to do it. We take the responsibility to support refugees financially, emotionally, and otherwise for a period of 1 year if we privately sponsor them. And of course, there is a lot of work that goes into it. And for me, really to be interested in joining activities like this and to pay attention to the play that Sangeeta writes and maybe share it in their fundraising or promotional activities to highlight refugee issues. And these are some of the things. And I encourage you to visit our websites, mosaicbc.org, to see how you can be involved in this really a worthwhile commitment to support humanity. The refugees didn't choose to leave, as Mohammed highlighted, and others, and they really deserve the respect that they should, and they should be given safety to do. Nobody plans to leave, and I would leave you with one of the stories, the power of stories, Jasper, when we were raising the issue and doing advocacy for Syrian refugees. A group of grade 5 students came and they wanted to hear from me about what they could do. And one of I said many things, and then they went back and they called me. Their teacher called me actually, saying that these students collected 50 care packages, bags full of interesting stuff for refugee kids. And then they brought the care packages to Mosaic, and it happened that our executive director at the time, Eob Naizigi, and the directors were in a meeting with the board, and I interrupted their meeting to take the students there. The students went there, and our executive director asked the students, "How did you come up with the story?" He said, one of them said, "Saleem told us that you will be given you will have really split-second decisions to make to collect whatever you treasure and value." So we used that notion and created a table, put stuff on the table, and told our peers, students, to collect 3 items within 20 seconds, and that's the only thing that you could carry. Because when refugees leave, they don't have time to plan what to take with them. And I thought that's a really powerful way to see that grade 5 students managed to use it. And I thought they were not paying attention to me, so I had to be more careful next time when I'm telling the story. But it's really powerful, and everyone could do their part to support a really good cause.
Thank you, Saleem. that's such an interesting story, and I just sort of ran through it in my head that, you know, that simple exercise of putting things on a table and saying, take, you know, you have a moment to decide what's important. I mean, that's such a powerful exercise. It encapsulates so much. Patricia, did you want to add anything to, you know, as a professional in working with refugees, to what recommendations for what people can do to support the cause?
No, I think that, you know, as Saleem said, just about I think probably most agencies have are doing private sponsorships. We've been doing it for quite some time now, and supporting those efforts are incredibly important, because they do, as Saleem said, they do allow all of us as agencies to bring people to Canada who are in dire straits. We really focus, for example, on family reunification, because we see that as being critical for people who are already here and don't have a support system in place because their families are in a refugee camp or away. And as I think has already been alluded to, we see people who have been in camps 3 generations, who have been born in camps, have their children in camps, have grandchildren in camps, and never get away. So whatever little bit that we can do, I think is just so incredibly important. And as I said, you know, it's not just Mosaic and ISSBC who does this. Other agencies do that. So whichever agency you're supporting and able to be engaged with is incredibly important. And all of us appreciate, and who are in this sector, all of us appreciate that kind of help.
Thanks, Patricia. Saleem, you said just earlier that one thing people can give is their attention, which is very powerful. And you know, we're all here because, Sangeeta, you cared enough to give your attention to write this play and engage with the story, with Hannah's family story. And that's where it all started, right? Like you just directed your attention and your energy and your curiosity towards this story, and it led us to here. So thank you for that. And you know, we're arriving at the end of our time together, so I just wanted to sort of bring things back to where we started with the play and the story and the film. So before I sign off, I wonder if Sangeeta, if you wanted to let folks know where how they can, you know, what to expect from the play and when we can expect to see it ourselves.
Yeah, thanks, Jasper. And yeah, as much as I gave my attention, I also felt they gave their attention to me, so that it's a two-way thing. And the play does have plans to be produced. I am unable to make the announcement, but follow Ruby Slippers Theatre. RubySlippers.ca is the website, and there will be an upcoming announcement soon. But I can say unofficially that we're looking at the fall for the production, so here in Vancouver.
Great. I just want to share a comment that just came in from Sandeep Glover. Sandeep says, "Thank you immensely for your insightful reflections and for sharing your lived experiences. Moving. I'm taking time with these potent words that arose here. We need to emphasize the importance of humanizing stories." So thank you, Sandeep, for joining us today and for your comment. I'd like to, thank all of you, Saleem, Mohammed, Patricia, Sangeeta, Hannah, Leticia. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for being so candid, for being so thoughtful, for taking the time to share your thoughts and stories. It means a lot to us that you're here. For everyone watching, you can find the film Continuous Journey on our website. I'm also going to drop a link into the chat right now for everyone. There it is. The film will be available until midnight tomorrow to stream for free. So if you have a moment, if you have 60 minutes to spend with the film, I highly recommend you do it. It's beautifully made. It's a terribly sad story, but it's a really important one. And it's an especially important story for our own local history. And so I encourage you to spend some time with it if you can. So with that in mind, thank you all for being here. It's been such a treat to spend time with you, and I hope we see each other again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jasper.
Thank
Thank you, Jasper.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you,
Enjoy the
Leticia.
movie.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.